Somebody's been growing in containers for 10 years. Every pot looks fine in June. Then the heat of July hits and the same 3 or 4 plants go from thriving to crispy in a week, and nothing about the routine changed. That's not bad luck. That's one of 5 mistakes sitting quietly inside a setup that looks completely fine. This video walks through 5 of them, whether you're working with a full backyard, a patio, or nothing more than a balcony and a few pots. It covers everything from the size of the container to what actually goes into that watering can twice a month. 3 of these are quiet enough that a grower can make them for years before the harvest ever shows it. For years, I ran my containers exactly like my raised beds. Same schedule, same soil. Took a couple of disappointing summers to figure out why that was the problem. One of these 5 isn't even about the plant. It's about something a lot of longtime growers spread across their containers every season thinking it's helping. July is exactly when this catches up with you. If any one of these 5 was already off going into the season, this is the week it stops being invisible. A plant that wilts by early afternoon no matter how much you water, or a container you're now watering every single day just to keep it alive. Some of this you can still turn around right now. Some of it you're stuck managing until next season. Either way, this is the moment it shows. These 5 make the list because they're the exact points where a container behaves nothing like a raised bed or an earth garden, and treating it like one is where all 5 mistakes start. Container gardening isn't a smaller version of a raised bed. It's a different system entirely, and every one of these 5 mistakes comes from treating it like one anyway. The first one is sizing the container for the plant sitting in front of you right now, instead of the plant it's going to be in 6 weeks. A tomato seedling looks tiny going into a container in spring. In 6 to 8 weeks, it's 5 or 6 feet tall, loaded with fruit. And that same container that looked generous in April is suddenly too small to hold its roots or its water. I used to size containers by what the seedling looked like on planting day. Cost me a few tomato plants that never got past golf ball-sized fruit before the whole thing gave out in the July heat. Most people don't think about this part until it's already a problem. In a raised bed or an earth garden, roots can travel down and out, hunting for whatever nutrients they need. In a container, that's not possible. The roots hit the walls of that pot and stop. Whatever nutrients are in that soil are the only nutrients that plant will ever get, which means a bigger container isn't just about root space, it's a bigger nutrient bank. Small container, small bank, and one heavy rain or one careless watering session can flush it out completely. The watering side compounds the same way. In spring, when it's mild and plants are small, you might water a container once or twice a week and be fine. By the time you're in the middle of June or July, plants are full-sized, evaporation is working against you, and the same container that needed water twice a week now needs it every single day just to keep up. For anything you'd grow in a vegetable garden, tomatoes, peppers, squash, cucumbers, the floor is 20 gallons. Fruit trees need at least 15. If cost is the real obstacle, you don't need anything fancy to hit that size. A used cattle mineral tub from a feed store runs about $3 and holds close to 20 gallons once you drill a few drainage holes into the sides. Low, not the bottom, since bottom holes don't drain well once the tub is sitting flat. And if your containers sit directly on soil instead of a patio or deck, drilling a handful of larger holes in the base lets roots push down into the ground underneath once the container fills up, so you're never fully boxed into the size you started with. The second one is grabbing whatever container is cheapest without matching it to the climate you're actually growing in. Fabric grow bags and hard nursery pots are not interchangeable, and which one works depends entirely on where you live. 6 grow bags for the price of 1 hard pot feels like a bargain. It's the same math as 6 umbrellas that turn inside out in the first real wind. Cheap and plentiful isn't the same as useful. In humid, storm-heavy climates, fabric bags drain well, and when your summer problem is too much rain, that's exactly what you want. In hot, dry climates, that same drainage works against you. The bag dries out by noon most days, and growers in places like the high desert who switch to hard nursery pots usually see the difference within a single season. If you're gardening somewhere with heavy clay soil and no real topsoil to speak of, mixing perlite into your container mix helps the same way. It keeps drainage working even when the base soil doesn't cooperate. If you're already past the basics and still fighting drought stress, there are a couple of tricks worth knowing. Wrapping a reflective or light-colored tarp around the outside of dark containers cuts down on how much heat the container itself absorbs, which matters more than people expect in full sun. And a wicking setup, a small water reservoir sitting under the container with a wick running up into the soil, lets you go from watering 3 or 4 times a day down to once because the plant pulls water up as it needs it instead of you guessing. Then there's the mistake that's worse than the rest, growing a fruit tree in a fabric bag. Potting mix breaks down in 3 to 5 years no matter what you're growing in, which means eventually you have to repot. In a fabric bag, the roots weave straight into the fabric, and by the time you need to repot, you're cutting the bag away from a root system that's grown into it. Getting the container right, size and material, solves the structural half of this. What you put back into that soil, and how often, is where even growers who've been doing this for years start cutting corners. The third one is fertilizing on the same schedule you'd use for a raised bed. Go back to that nutrient bank idea from a minute ago. A container holds a fixed closed amount of soil, and that soil runs out fast because there's no surrounding earth for roots to reach into once it's depleted. The real number is every 2 weeks, minimum, and that's under ideal conditions with no heavy rain and no accidental overwatering flushing nutrients out the bottom. If you're getting regular rain or you tend to overwater, that number drops to every 10 days. A real schedule looks like this. Ratios matter more than brand names. An all-purpose organic granular fertilizer, something in the range of a 555 or a 533, where all 3 numbers are represented and none of them is wildly out of balance with the others, at about 2 tablespoons per container. Alongside that, a small amount of bone meal, roughly a teaspoon, which is concentrated phosphorus and calcium, exactly what drives strong root development and supports blooming and fruiting later on. Both go in together every 14 days at minimum, every 10 if the weather's working against you. A lot of gardeners aren't skipping fertilizer entirely. They're pouring in a splash whenever they remember, with no real schedule behind it, and assuming that counts. Have you had a plant that looked fine one week and stalled out the next, even though you were feeding it? Tell me what you were using and how often. The fourth one is relying only on that granular fertilizer and never adding a liquid. Granular organics have to break down through the soil's microbiome before a plant can actually use them. They're essentially raw material waiting to become compost. A raised bed or an earth garden has a rich, established microbiome to do that work. A container has a fraction of that. So the same granular fertilizer that works well in the ground is working at a fraction of the speed inside a pot. A liquid, water-soluble fertilizer solves that. It's already broken down, so the plant pulls from it immediately instead of waiting weeks for bacteria and fungi to do the job. My own routine looks like this. In a 2-gallon watering can, 2 to 3 tablespoons of fish fertilizer, which is excellent for micronutrients but usually runs high in nitrogen and not much else, so it needs balancing. Add a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of a balanced water-soluble fertilizer, something with all 3 numbers close together to round it out. That combination goes in every other week, right alongside the granular schedule. If mixing 2 products feels like more than you want to manage, a single all-in-one water-soluble fertilizer, organic or synthetic, works as a simpler substitute. It just won't be quite as tailored. One small thing worth knowing: if you go the fish fertilizer route, the bottle usually has a standard screw top, and a spare hot sauce or barbecue sauce squeeze cap fits it well enough to stop it dripping everywhere on your hands and your patio. Twice a month feels like plenty, until you remember a 5-gallon bucket doesn't hold much more reserve than a gas tank running on E. The fifth one isn't about the plant at all. It's about a habit a lot of longtime growers repeat every season without questioning it: what they spread across the top of their containers. Mulch matters more in a container than almost anywhere else in the garden, because a container dries out faster than any raised bed or earth garden ever will. 3 to 4 inches of it locks in moisture, blocks weed seeds from germinating, and once summer heat builds, keeps roots noticeably cooler and less stressed. This is where even experienced growers get caught off guard. Mulching too early actually works against you. In early spring, dark exposed soil warms up faster in the sun, And warmer soil early in the season helps roots establish. Mulch too soon and you're insulating the soil against the exact warmth the plant needs right now. The right time to add it is once the days are consistently warm and the heat is starting to build. Right after planting is too early. What you use matters as much as when. Shredded hardwood bark, cedar, pine bark nuggets, arborist wood chips, shredded leaves, pine straw, any natural material works. What doesn't? Dyed mulch, which is usually ground-up construction scrap colored to look like real wood. Rubber mulch, which is old tires breaking down slowly into your soil. And stone, which never decomposes and never feeds anything. One of the cheapest options worth knowing, wheat straw left to sit for 3 or 4 months before you use it. Fresh straw drops weed seeds straight into your containers. Left to decay first, those seeds germinate and die on their own. And what's left behind makes some of the best mulch you can get for almost nothing. Then there's the risk sitting inside the bag itself if you skip that step. Hay or straw that didn't come from a certified organic source can carry herbicide residue that survives long after the bale dried out, and it doesn't announce itself. It shows up as stunted growth, curled leaves, a plant that looks sick for no reason you can point to. I mulched a whole run of containers one year with hay I got cheap off a guy down the road. Every pepper plant in that batch curled up and stalled by midsummer. Took me the better part of a season to figure out it was the hay. Nothing to do with the watering or the feeding. All 5 of these come down to the same thing, carrying habits from a raised bed or an earth garden into a system that runs by completely different rules. Once you stop treating a container like a small raised bed, all 5 get a lot harder to get wrong. Even with all 5 of these handled, there's still going to be a stretch of summer where containers threaten to dry out no matter what you do. 2 things make that stretch manageable instead of exhausting. Drip irrigation waters slower and deeper than any hose ever will, spreads a lot less disease than overhead watering, and once it's on a timer, checking your containers stops being something you have to schedule your whole afternoon around. Shade cloth does the rest, installed once real heat arrives and pulled down before hurricane season starts. It cuts down on how much you need to water in the first place, and plants under it actually produce more, with less stress and less pest pressure, because dappled light through the hottest part of the day is easier on a plant than full sun for 10 hours straight. Start with whatever container you're already running. Check the gallon size against what's actually planted in it. Tomatoes and fruit trees need the most room, herbs and lettuce need the least. If you're working with a balcony or a few pots instead of a backyard, the same 20-gallon rule still applies. It just might mean 2 containers instead of 6. Then check what's on top of the soil right now. If it's straw or hay and you don't know where it came from, that's worth confirming before the heat sets in, not after. This is part of a run I'm doing on container gardening this season, so if there's something specific you're running into that I haven't covered yet, drop it in the comments and I'll work it into the lineup. If this saved you a summer of daily watering, subscribing keeps videos like this one coming your way. I get into more of this in the guide on the website, along with the free garden planning calculator if you want to run the numbers for your own space. If I had to choose, I'd size up before I'd mulch. Everything else on this list is a lot easier to fix than a plant that's already root-bound by the time July gets here.